All right, thanks for checking out our video series, Writing and AI. We felt like we just needed to have some content that delved into, as we say in this document, painting the gray with these conversations, because everyone is going to think about AI and writing within their local context, and should certainly do that. But having an opportunity to hear different perspectives and to bring those conversations to educators so that they can hold discourse within their building or team, I think is just really important. And so I'm really grateful that we put this series together. And today we have Sarah Essay at ESU 10 and Evi Wusk of Peru State, who are joining us for this conversation where we're going to start with the why. And so it's really imperative that we frame at least the whole point of writing perhaps in the first place, and where does AI fit in or in support of this or around this, and in the era of AI, does writing still matter? Those are topics we could talk about for days. We're going to go for about 10-15 minutes here just as a primer for folks to then have your own conversation. And so to kind of ease into that, we're going to say this, I guess, is what is the purpose of writing? I'm going to ask Sarah this question first and hear her opinion, and we'll just kind of go from there. So Sarah, thanks for joining us. I'll have you start.
Thanks for having us. So I think when I think of the purpose of writing, the first thing that always comes to mind is that writing is for communication and to show what you know. But then I think when we get a little deeper into it, writing can really help us solidify our thinking. When we're asked to write, we're consolidating what we think we know, and then we end up usually finding out what we don't know. So when I think about, why would we even write? Obviously to communicate, but then also to strengthen our learning, and to make connections between ideas and topics that we're learning about. So I think it's just really multifaceted, and it really has a lot of benefit on our learning overall.
Yeah, so providing that academic opportunity to explore ideas and also what you know about a topic, and it's a skill at the same time. And so I think some of that is what makes this a complicated topic to entertain, as we've just simply labeled it here with this question. Evi, where does that land with you, I guess, as you approach that question?
Yeah, yes to everything Sarah said. And also I think about identity. I spend a lot of time working with junior high students, and for them to write I and then tell their story and learn to wield their voice is part of what I watched it again and again. It helped them put their feet on the ground and figure out what they actually think and process this thing that happened to them. So it helps them figure out, and me too, it helps us figure out who we are. It helps us to connect with other people. I think about like writing my best friend's wedding toast. It's a way of loving others. We just use writing for all kinds of different things. I write little grocery notes. Sometimes it's just really practical. But for our purposes today, long form writing can be personal. It can be narrative. We can be trying to persuade other people. There's all kinds of reasons why we choose to write. And like you said before we started recording, Andrew, some of it's, kind of personal, almost even emotional. When this AI stuff started coming along, I was almost grieving, like what is happening? This is one of my favorite things. And so I love starting with this question, why do we write?
Absolutely. And that on a very personal level, that is a way, to Sarah's point, that I have found valuable for exploring my own experiences. And it is crazy that you can almost like press yourself for a deeper understanding of something you already knew that was locked or tangled within your thinking, that writing helps you to sort of untangle. And so then why would we write then when AI can do that for us? Because, here's why, you're like, well, I feel like we just answered that. Kinda, but maybe not entirely, because as Evi was bringing up, there's a number of purposes for writing. And perhaps AI feels like a solution for some of those purposes. But we also are recognizing the skill piece, and I love what Evi said, to put your feet on the ground, like how we start to think about ourselves and create identity out of that. And so, yeah, Sarah, I'll ask you, why write then when AI can write for us?
Well, I think this kind of relates to what Evie was saying with our identity, and the fact that when we think about writing historically and what it's really elevated in the past, I think is stories that we generally haven't listened to or really need to process and hear. I think historically, of all of the different pieces of literature that really changed popular opinion and the way that people were thinking about society, stories like Uncle Tom's Cabin and how influential that was to understanding people's experiences before the Civil War. And had something like that not been published, had somebody not taken the time to actually write that story, how our history might be influenced and might be different. And so it makes me think then of AI and how AI kind of looks at what has been published and what has been written and what exists out there. And if we were to just, let that sit and never do any sort of like personal identity writing or pushing back again, how many opportunities would be missing for us to look at things deeper or look at things differently and get somebody else's perception or opinion or something that needs to be uncovered that hasn't yet been uncovered. And I think writing allows us to do all of that.
Oh, it makes me think of something my friend Paul Darvazi, who's going to be in this series, by the way, so look for his video, or the video that he's in. He said, will there come a day where AI will just be looking at other AI generated content and that it is just sort of like a snake eating its tail, I guess, sort of thing, which is a little dystopian, maybe, as we like think about that. But I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities. And so that's kind of interesting to consider as well. Evie, what would you add?
I just can't help thinking about product and process. Just because the AI can make these things, it can spit out this product, which there's varying degrees of how great that product shoots out, depending on how you prompt it. But something is also happening during the process that I just think is a worthwhile way to spend your time as a human. I think one of my best friends loves to knit, and you can go buy a scarf at the store and it's a heck of a lot faster, but she likes the human activity of I'm making something, and when I'm making it for someone, it's not just about the thing. It's about the relationship that the thing has between the author and the listener. I think about the magic that I can go in and read stuff that is written by people who are now passed away, and it feels like I'm just somehow magically sitting there with them, So yes, I know as writing teachers, we like to get really academic and have people do structured writing, but I also just think it's I have never spent an hour working on a piece of writing where at the end of it, I went, well, that was a waste of time. Something got figured out, like you said, Andrew, something got unwound or straightened out in my head. Or I've had the writing experience a number of times where I either write a sentence that I didn't even know I thought that until I wrote it down, and it's like, oh, or I'll write a sentence that puts a lump in my throat, and I'm like, oh, there's something there. So just the act of putting my words out into a concrete form, I think is valuable. And I know some people would argue that, but I think, at this moment, that's something worth fighting for. That's something worth valuing and holding up.
Yes. And I'm going to get wound up on this one now. That's part of why there's kind of a couple things to say here with this. At one, I understand the need for academic writing that is timed writing in a space that is a snapshot reflection of your understanding of a particular piece of knowledge, content, whatever it is that you've experienced, and you're able to do that. But the best writing comes from unpressured moments where you are committed to the thing that you're trying to untangle, right? And so when we think about what are our assessments asking students to engage in, to reflect on, to process deeply, and to what degree do they have agency or choice in their ability to find their place in that conversation, or what perspective they might have, or what experience they can relate, what they're asked to write about or bring to what they're being asked to entertain. I don't know, there's a myriad of different ways to approach this, but I hope that just because AI exists, that we don't get away from allowing writing to happen in unstructured and unpressured moments with a clock and someone looking over my shoulder. While I can, and then we're going to talk about both sides of our mouth today, but both of those are valuable, but we can't just get rid of one for the sake of authorship and authenticity. And that's an interesting piece of this as well. Sorry, you wound me up here, folks. Anything else that we kind of add maybe as we're kind of going to pivot here to that writing process, I would think in a second, but.
I have one more thing. I think writing allows us to reflect on, our thoughts, but it also actually changes us as we move forward. There's a story, and maybe it's well known, but it's about a surgeon named Mark Bernstein, and he started writing down all of the mistakes that were made in his ER. And in doing that, by him writing them down, actually all of his team started making fewer errors because they found that the act of pausing and writing and reflecting changed the way that we acted moving forward. And so I think writing can help us reflect, but it also can change us as we get more proactive in what we're doing and we're thinking about putting a stop so we can reflect and write something down. It impacts us.
Kind of like trains your brain a little bit in a certain way. And to bring this particular video in this series to a close, and it's really tough to do this, but to stop, but understanding for the folks that are listening that there are a series of videos that you can access through our document. And so I'll throw this up here right now because it feels like it's the right time to do so. I would encourage you to do that because we're going to explore this in greater depth because we're going to go here. Why use AI in the writing process? And I'll say it again, don't want to speak out both sides of my mouth, but I do think that there is the opportunity to leverage this technology to support the writing process to lead to the best end product, to use Evi's distinction there from before, but without sacrificing some of the things that we are talking about in this very conversation, right? And I think that even though there will be the temptation in a future of work and world where, or maybe writing the wedding speech for your friend, that you use this technology, fair enough, fine. But in an academic setting, how do we allow both to coexist for the moment, at least, right? So let's just kind of say in our present reality, and that's where this series hopes to go with an eye to the future and how things might change, but what's practical now. And so, yeah, Sarah, I'll tee you up here then and say, how do you see these two sort of being the potential for them to coexist?
I definitely think they can. I think that AI can provide a model for people to get started. We were talking about video games and gamifying earlier, and it makes me think of watching somebody else do a video walkthrough of a video game that you're going to play. You see them going through it, you see the actions they do, but that's not you actually playing the video game. You still go and you still play it, but you've watched somebody else do it and you learn from that experience. So I think that's one place where AI can situate itself. They can provide a template for us and an example for us so that we feel more confident and maybe even more willing to try different things when we actually experience the writing.
Yeah, Evi?
Well, and I keep thinking about, is there ways for the AI and the writer to dance throughout the process? I love it. I heard someone say, prompt the human before you prompt the AI. So actually take the time to think, what is it I'm wanting to write? And then prompt if you're going to be doing something collaborative, or use the AI to help you brainstorm, like have it list out 10 different ideas before you write, or have it give you some writerly suggestions, more like a writing tutor. I think there's some ways that it could still happen, but I think in all of it, the example that sticks out to me, I don't think it's in the new version, but you guys know the Elements of Style, that old school handbook. In some of the first editions, there's a part at the very beginning where they have 2 paragraphs, and one, they say the exact same thing, the same content, and the bottom one just sings. It's like when someone says, I have a dream, and it just, there's an energy and electricity, like a human something in it, that I think as human writers, we got to be really good at putting how we say it matters. How do we wield our voice in that AI writing piece? Where do I show up? Where do I make it sing in how I choose to say it. I know we can prompt AI to do all kinds of things, but I think choosing how we're going to make it say things and what we want it to say is, I said this before, but I just think it's worthwhile. And I think it's a good use of our time.
Absolutely. And that it is with that heart and with that perspective that we have invested in this effort to put this resource together in the hopes that we can have conversations like this and provide the resources that are therein to equip educators with the chance to hold their discussions like this, again, in your local context, and then act on that as you think is in the best interest for the students that you serve. And so I certainly want to say thank you to Evi and to Sarah, not only for this conversation, for the others that they're a part of, and for their collaboration through this whole project. I will include for this section on the document that I had up there, the episode of the podcast that Evi and I put together that very much talks around this same topic. And so I would encourage you to check that out if you're interested. And in addition to that, always pointing to our ESUs, because we have folks all across the state who, here in Nebraska, who are there to help and be thought partners and supports in this work. And so with all those kind of said and established, I hope that you enjoy this series and find this informative, and please connect, because we want to do that around this work and be thought partners with you in that. So thanks, everybody, and on to the next one.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.